Welcome to today's webinar from Fortra, Robot Health Check. Thanks for joining us. So the question is, how long has Robot been up and running on your systems, and who originally set it up? Was it you? Were all the pieces and parts put into place for the robot environment to be happy and healthy? Or perhaps there might have been a training gap along the way and maybe you missed out on some of the features that make Robot even more powerful. So what we're going to do today is we're going to shed some light on what we call a robot health check. And I'd like to introduce myself, Chuck Lisinski, Director of Technical Solutions, Help Systems, also a board member of QUser.org. If you're looking for a user group to participate in and learn about IBMI even more deeply, check us out at QUser.org, and certainly you can join us from anywhere across the country or across the world. Tom, what's going on with you?
Well, thank you, Chuck, and doing great, doing great. Hey, happy to be here and talking to customers about how they can get more or stay on top of the health of their robot products. So I'm our EVP of Technical Solutions now at Fortra, and I'm also an IBM Power Champion. We had a name change November 2nd. It was simply a name change and really help the help systems company Fortra focus on cybersecurity for the entire enterprise. But let's not forget, we have a lot of robot customers running IBMI and automation, so that's important to us too. We'll explain that a little later. But we're here today to talk about this robot solution of products. It is a family of products that's been around for some years now, and it didn't just happen overnight. It all started with Robot Schedule in the scheduling space. Then we got into interactive scheduling with Robot Replay, and then notification with Robot Alert, and then a little later, Robot Schedule Enterprise for customers that had IBMI or at that time AS400 and Windows, and then IBMI iSeries and Windows, Unix, and Linux. So we've been doing that kind of enterprise scheduling from IBMI for many years now. Then we talk about message management with the Robot Console Network and really resource monitoring with Alert, depending upon what your configuration is. If you have multiple systems, we generally lay in Robot Console with Network and Alert to provide a centralized QSysOper monitoring, resource monitoring technology. And let's not forget about high availability. We have Robot HA, which is journal-based replication, Robot Save for backup and recovery, and again, we tie in Robot Alert for notification. In the performance monitoring, real-time monitoring, we have Robot Monitor that Chuck will be covering that does a lot with overall health of the system, showing it graphically in dashboards, but then also uses notification to alert, network, etc. And of course, we'll cover Robot Space. We'll kind of roll over Robot AutoTune today. We won't talk about that product, but Performance Navigator either today. That's your size and capacity product. And then nor will we talk about Robot Reports. But in every one of these products, there's some cleanup that you need to be concerned about or should be. And even if we don't talk about them today, you should look at the history of the products and make sure you have purges and things like that set up that are part of the product. So we'll talk about Robot Schedule, Schedule Enterprise, Console and Alert by Chuck, Robot Space and Monitor by Chuck, and then I'll wrap it up with Robot HA today. So let's talk about Robot Schedule. Robot Schedule is the founding product at the Help Systems company, now Fortra. It started it all back in 1982. And it's been running batch processes for customers all those 40 years. Of course, it's been enhanced. We have integration with Enterprise One from Oracle, and we have SAP integration right from IBMI. We can run interactive screens with Robot Replay, and we can tie into dynamic parameters using that technology. Of course, we can't just ignore all the other servers that you timer jobs, and we also can run the robot, so the Windows, Unix, and Linux processes right from Robot Schedule. So moving along, when we look at Robot Schedule and we think about it, I think about things daily. Of course, you want to know what's happening daily. So there is the good morning reports that help you with job terminations, number of jobs that ran. Of course, that can be more than daily. You can run that over an entire month, an entire year, but it also can do some things like forecasting and percent run deviations and job warning messages. And then weekly, you should be running that same report create and review your forecast so you know what's going to happen in the future, and looking for warning messages also. Then on an annual basis or yearly basis, some things expire inside of the robot schedule product, and that is calendars and date objects. And we have commands that allow you to do that, and or interactive or processes from the GUI to help out with that. Then annually, you should look at jobs that aren't running. We added a unused jobs report, and that exists in the GUI, but you can run it also from a command line or just schedule it in robot schedule itself. Moving along, when we look at robot schedule, if you want to see the health of what's happening in robot schedule, the completion history. Completion history in robot schedule is very powerful. You can click on it from here, this little icon. You can drill into your system. You have the ability to do this in a green screen too. In the job completion history, we will see many different statuses. Primarily, we're hoping to see completed and green lights, which means that's good. But there are warning messages from things like Opal and from date objects and calendars and starting and stopping the job. And of course, if a job ends abnormally, you'll see it red and it'll say abnormal on it. So be looking at that. But what happens is this is history inside of our database, and that can grow and grow and grow if you're not purging it properly. Now, the other thing is the schedule activity monitor is a great health check too, because you can see your forecast, your jobs that are running, or maybe message wait, and your completion history again summarized together. So the reason we call this part of the health check is it gives you a way of being able to have a pulse on your schedule on a daily, up to second, up to minute process. So as we said, there are some things you should be doing yearly. You can switch calendars and data objects right through the user interface. Through the GUI is the best place, because a couple things we have here, you can see where used, where's a data object used, where's a calendar used, and then you can switch all the jobs associated with that calendar or data object. Very handy. Then we can, maybe you've inherited the robot schedule system from somebody else and you're like, I don't know how these jobs are related. So we have the job blueprint feature to be able to run that and be able to extract out the relationships of the jobs. We'll build all the arrows and everything for you. You'll probably have to move things around a little bit once you get in here. But nonetheless, it's a great way of being able to document what the relationships are of your jobs. And then we also recommend group jobs to help build in a better structure for running your jobs. Some other things we need to look at if you've inherited robot schedulers: are you using our security? Are the purge histories set up correctly? Have you enabled the daylight savings feature so that it automatically switches over for you? Or do you want it to do that? You might not want that. So we'll talk about that in a little bit too. Then also you can take a look at the RBT message file. This is a history file. It's just showing you earlier. And then the unused jobs report. And then other things you should consider are backups, replication, whether to use green screen or GUI or both. The GUI is free. You should be using both at minimum, and maybe just the GUI altogether if you're new to Robot Schedule. I get it. If you've been with Robot Schedule forever, the green screen's much faster, right? But there's things I've just showed you: the blueprint, the SAM, the unused reports. They don't exist in the green screen. And then what about service level agreements? If you're worried about that, you can build automation into that, or you can use our schedule activity monitor to help out with that. Or there is even a command called jobs missed today. And that command will generate a report of looking at the forecast and looking at the actual run. So we broke these out into the system defaults. I'm going to show you this here interactively just shortly, but you can set up your security, your daylight savings by just checking a box. You can establish how you want jobs to end, whether or not you want the job logs. And moving on, we also have history options on what you want to set up for purging. You need to set those up. And then we also have what to do when robot starts up, where you want your messages to go. They don't have to go to QSys Opera, they could go somewhere else. And then object ownership, and then also we support the independent auxiliary storage pools and where do you want us to run. And then of course with the enterprise, if you have Robot Schedule Enterprise, there's also history with it. And another thing where you can enable running the jobs under the account that the service is installed on. Anyways, that's a lot. let's switch over to a live demo. And Chuck, I know
All right.
you're out there hanging out there.
Is the
Hopefully,
fun part.
let me get this out of the way. All
There we
right.
go.
Are you
Can't
see my
quite see
screen just?
the left-hand side of your screen. Looks a little chopped off.
Oh, really? Let me do this. How's that?
Nope. Still a little chopped off on the left-hand side.
How about now?
That's better. Can make it a little
Okay.
bigger.
I'm gonna just do this versus. All right. Oh, and I think this is part of the
Beautiful.
problem.
Got
Okay,
it.
good.
Yep.
Well, hey, you just saw some features of the GUI. You can slide things around and move them up and down, and you could move this bar up if I want, that kind of thing. I can move columns around. So, hey, all good little navigating things. So here we're in the GUI. I'm connected in host mode, so I don't have time to go through everything, but you got consolidated reports, you got individual partitions. I'm working with our wisdom system right now. When I click on these different buttons, it'll open things up and I can drill into things like we talked about earlier, group jobs. I have my schedule activity monitor up here on top. I can go in and click on that and I can see the jobs forecasted, the jobs running, and the jobs completed all in one nice little panel. I'm going to come back to the completion history in just a little bit, so I'm not going to drill into it from here, but we can right from here look at the properties of the job. We can right click on any of them. We could actually even force a job to run from the forecast if we wanted to. So here we're just coming up with the jobs that are running and then the jobs that completed. Okay. And see, we can see this job here. It's probably sitting on a message wait. I could go out there and look at the status and then work with that job. Pretty good day going here. We have a job that failed. I can change the sort on this, and I'm not going to drill into the completion history from here because we're going to save it and do it from here. So job completion history is updated every time a job completes, plus if there's any warning messages. And we can see I have a job running down here, which is means it's at a message wait more than likely. Maybe Chuck can go out there and clean that up on QSysOper. But here we can see this job terminated. And if I want, I can drill right into the job logs from here. I can see percent complete, things like that. I also, in filtering, I can build my own filters if I want. So I can select this job and now I see all the instances of it and I see that we're having some kind of little problem here with that job. Not sure exactly what it's doing. I might have to fix that up, but I can also see all jobs. So there's a lot of different ways that we can manage this. My filter I had here is you can create your own filters, and I did that with job name, and then you got a little drop down. So good way of being able to select jobs. Okay, so that's completion history. Let's move ahead and talk about purging and kind of the daily. So I'm going to just move my GUI down here a little bit. See, we have system defaults. If I double click on that, we'll get a screen that gives us multi-tabs here. This is where I turn on robot security if I want, the enable the daylight savings, the capturing of job logs, the history options, how long am I going to keep the history for my jobs, my job monitors, and my event monitors. And then we have startup parameters and then enterprise also. So there's purges on every single one of them. Now let's also go look at our reports because I wanted to show you where the unused job is. And this is very simple. All you do is you go into this, set up how far back you want to go and submit it, or you could even schedule this and have it run. Should be doing that at least yearly on the system. Let's see, did I miss anything else? This is where our enterprise agents are at, so we can see what Windows or Linux or Unix servers am I talking to. And then we also have our monitors down here. Now the blueprint function is very simple thing to do. If I come in here to group jobs, or any job really for that matter, I can come in and say, maybe I have the end of day group and I want to see what the relationship of those jobs are, I can submit a blueprint off and that will run in the background. And what happens then is there's a spot inside the product here under the GUI where we can just look at that blueprint for here. So I'm going to close this tree, save a little real estate, hit the blue job, the job blueprints, and that'll give us a list of all the ones that are available. And I think we said this was EOD group right here. We just ran that today. And if I double click on that, it brings up a diagram of these jobs, of course, on my other screen. Are you seeing that okay, Chuck?
I am.
Okay, good. So now these jobs are all in here. There is a reload function because then we can see if there's any other relationships to those jobs that are part of this group. I might have some redundancy coming on in here, the way things are set up, but hopefully this job doesn't run too often. So we can see there's multi relationships in here amongst all these different jobs. Okay. So, and then I would personally work on cleaning up all these relationships so we can see them in the diagram. Nice thing here is we got a legend to be able to look at too. So that's blueprint. Let's do this. Let's now switch over to another couple topics. I'm gonna share my set of the green, well, we'll look at, since the green screen came up first, we'll do that. So one of the files we recommended you look at is the robot message file. And the reason we have you look at that is it provides you with a feel for how many records are in this file, well, how many deleted records. And ours is not bad, I wouldn't worry about it. But we've been on systems where they have several million completion history records, if not several hundred million, if not 1 billion records, all right? Meaning people hadn't purged robot completion history for a decade, 2 decades, okay? Obviously, you don't need that much history. Maybe a year, maybe 2, that would be plenty. Some customers maybe only keep 30 days worth of histories. If we add library robot lib to our library list, robot, I think that's the command. Can't think of the command. I was going to show you the command that you can use and schedule to keep up on your SLAs. It's like jobs miss command. I'd have to double check on that. Chuck, I can't remember that one off the top of my head. Do you remember?
I don't. I don't.
Well, anyways, you can always do this in robot.
You can use a wildcard.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I think it's, let me get it here. And maybe it's just jobs missed. It's not a standard command. That's why I can't find it. Okay, I think it's just JOB something. Nope.
Good try.
Oh, you know what? I think it actually might be forecast or something like that.
Yes, FCT. There you go.
Here we go.
That's
Yep,
it.
there we go. A little thinking on the run here. But this is a really nice little thing that you can put in Robot Schedule as a Robot Schedule job. Run it every 15 minutes, and it'll look at your forecast plus your completion history. And if there's any deltas, it can set out warnings, create a report. Very handy. Okay.
It's a cool. Yeah, it's a cool command. It's a cool command.
Yeah. Next thing we have is knowledge base. I'm in the Fortra, formerly Help Systems knowledge base. And if you click on knowledge base, like I just did, and then you come down here, you can find the robot knowledge base. So this allows you to kind of filter things down. Now I could just go into robot schedule, but there's some robot general knowledge that's really helpful. One, backing up the robot products. That's just a document out here. I'm not going to go through and read this all to you, but some tips on all the various robot products from a backup perspective. And then mirroring, another thing we hear a lot about people, or replication, really. I think at some point in time we should maybe consider calling this replication. But if you go through, you'll see all the various products in here. And if there's a special link, like I think in the case of robot schedule, there's another sub document that you can go to and so forth. So that's
network from a checkup standpoint. So just a quick reminder on what the role is of Robot Console and Alert. First of all, Robot Console was developed back in the days of a dedicated system console, and it was focused primarily on message interception, automation, and escalation. But over the years, it's been enhanced to do things like resource monitoring, so monitoring subsystems, job queues, and so forth. We've also added application or IFS log monitoring for WebSphere apps, Java apps, and so forth that create logs in the IFS, as well as some other log monitoring, for instance, Security Audit Journal, FTP, and QHIST. That's primarily the realm of our PowerTech security products nowadays, but that's still part of the product. You'll notice that the graphical interface looks very much like the schedule graphical interface that Tom was showing us. So that's really where the enhancements have been placed. For instance, if you want to do IFS log monitoring, you have to use the graphical interface. And then likewise, robot alert interfaces with console, schedule, and all of our other products. And of course, that's part of a cleanup process as well. You need to think about the message history that goes out via robot alert. Okay, so some of the things you can do from a robot console health check standpoint. The first one is the good morning report. So that's something, first of all, that you can automate, and you can see how you're doing in terms of automation. All right, you're receiving a lot of messages. Are you letting those go into history and not doing anything with them? Are you having too many resource failures? In other words, you maybe somebody set up some resources to be monitored, and more often than not, it's coming up incorrectly. And that's something you should pay attention to, because you could be sending out some false alerts as part of that. So one way to prevent that is there is a command in the robot console library, RBD-conlib, to put a resource on hold. For instance, maybe when you're doing a backup and you're going to shut down a subsystem, and then you can release the subsystem monitor after the backup is completed. All right, so just some things, some tips you can do on a daily basis. On a weekly basis, there is the purge option, and we've created a new command to do the purging. It's RBC delete hist. That replaces the call to a program where you had to put some parameters in a parameter string. So the robot RBC delete hist command is a little easier to use. And also, if you want to know if you actually are even purging, take a look at this file, RBC message history in RBD-conlib. And yeah, Tom, I have seen as many as 30 million history records. And
Ooh.
at that point, yeah, that's a lot of records. So things to consider. Okay, so now let's say you've inherited Robot Console and you need to just do some setup review. All right, are things really necessary anymore? So some of the things you can look at is maybe somebody embedded some notification into what's called Opal in a message set, and maybe that person's no longer there. So you can review the Opal. We've got some reports called message detail reports, where you can look at Opal and basically scan through the Opal in a spool file. We also have the most common messages report, and that tells you if message sets or rules are defined over maybe the top 10, top 20, or even top 30 messages that are occurring on your system. And so in other words, are there rules in place to make things nice and tidy? So definitely recommend doing a message set review. There is likewise in Robot Console an obsolete message set review, kind of like the obsolete jobs report in robot schedule. If you don't understand how message set automation works, certainly you can reach out, and we provide services in this area. Something to think about too, occasionally we have like a circular redirect of messages. Messages can move around in your world, and then just like in robot schedule, consider your replication and backup requirements. So those are some robot console checks you can do. For robot alert, a lot of people don't know this, but if you hit the F11 key in the device list, there's a last use date. And so that gives you right in front of your face a list of those devices that really probably haven't been used, possibly in years. And the same column exists in broadcast lists, and then there's a couple of programs that you can call, and we've got some documentation in our knowledge base as to how to set up a purge process, and you can look at the RBAHS file to see if purging is taking place for Robot Alert. I mentioned the Robot Console Good Morning Report. A couple things you can check here. First of all, you can just see how many messages are being processed by Robot Console. There's an average wait time for a non-console message reply. So you can see, when automation is in place, things are happening really quickly, but for those messages that aren't automated, they are just sitting out there for a long period of time. This is more than a day that a message sat out there. And this will also tell you if some of your messages are being automated with Opal, and how many actually were processed by Opal, and then how many pages actually, or how many alerts were sent out. As part of the Robot Console Good Morning report, we also summarize the resource checks that have taken place. All right, and this is summarized by category. So it looks like we've got a subsystem defined here that is more often than not probably coming up in some unexpected status. So now you need to dig into the details and run a report or look at the detail behind the subsystem resource monitors that are being checked. Okay, moving on to the most common messages report. This is one of the things we use with all initial implementations of Robot Console, and it's here where you get an idea of what messages are occurring on your system, and these are your targets. What are your opportunities for doing automation in your environment? All right, so if you just start, for instance, with the top 10 jobs, and you can see here some of these messages already have rules assigned to them, but some of the rules that you might assign to these messages are just, for instance, to suppress them from history. Nobody wants to see them. Nobody cares about them. For instance, journal receivers, the journal receivers message, that might be a good message simply to ignore. The obsolete message sets report like this shows you that, hey, I've got some message sets that haven't ran in 4 years, some rules that haven't run in years. So this is your opportunity to clean up that rules file. Okay, so Robot Console is a product that you would install across each one of your partitions. If you want to consolidate all those events, whether they're message events or robot schedule events or robot monitor events, into one single unified interface, that's where Robot Network comes into play. So along with Robot Console and potentially Robot Schedule installed across your environment, you would install Robot Network. All right, so if you're not familiar with Robot Network, this is our consolidation tool for Robot. And it gives you a number of features, including centralized rules distribution using what's called the product master. We allow cross-partition reactivity with Robot Schedule. And then we also give you the centralized Robot Network Status Center, which is a central repository of everything that's happening that could impact your environment. Could be a job ending abnormally, could be a message waiting for a reply. And a lot of people don't realize that you have the opportunity to do centralized escalation in Robot Network as well, and I'm going to show you that during the live demo. Okay, so Robot Network checks. On a daily basis, you should check the status center and make sure that statuses are being acknowledged. If not, we do have a command around acknowledging those statuses automatically if you're, for instance, just emailing them out and not spending a lot of time in the status center. And here's the RBN ACT command that's used for automatically acknowledging. So you might want to say, if my events are 5 days old or 3 days old, let's go ahead and acknowledge those automatically. And then likewise, make sure that the purge steps are set up so that the events are being purged. And then under the setup review, did you know that Robot Network can collect performance metrics? All right, so there is some high-level metrics like disk storage, memory metrics, and so forth that Robot Network can collect. Robot Network does do that centralized notification. You can use SNMP, you can use SMTP. We can even call a user-based program. And did you know there is something called a product master there? So if you bring up Robot Schedule or Robot Console in host mode, if you have Robot Network in place, you can use that product master as a central repository for instructions. So for message processing or job rules, and we can send those out and distribute them across your network. All right, and finally, do you have an alternate host in place to allow automatic failover of host control? So your nodes automatically fail over to that host system and then fail back when the production host comes back. All right, so here we are. We are in Robot Network. We're on our host system. We're looking at the properties. Under product statuses, you might not realize that this is where our alerting takes place, but for each one of our products, you can have specific escalation. So I could send out a robot alert message. I could send a SNMP trap. I could call a user-defined program, but this is also where the history property is maintained. All right, so for robot console, when those messages come into a robot console, as long as they've been acknowledged, we'll purge them automatically after 7 days. All right, Tom, live demo.
We're ready.
Let's see how this goes. All right. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to go into robot alert, and I'm going to use my wisdom system. So I'll do an RBO command. I'm going to go into alert. I'm going to go into directory and the device list, and I'm just going to hit F11. So there's several views here, but you can see right here, this is your last used column. So this should be an easy way to go about doing some purging. All right, and we have the same column in broadcast lists. All right. All right, while I'm in the green screen, let's just do a display file description, RBT conlib RBC message history. And we're going to go to the bottom. So on this system, we're doing a really good job cleaning things up. We only have 3,000 outstanding messages, 31,000 deleted, no big deal at all. If you see 1 million, 10 million, something like that, even, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, you probably don't have a purge set up. So the RBC delete history, let's see if, there we go. Here's our delete history command. And you might want to keep like 35 days worth of message history. Remove replied messages, yes. Severity 99, and remove response required messages. So these are the parameters that I would suggest. And I would also put this obviously in robot schedule to make sure that things are getting cleaned up nicely. All right. So here's my robot console graphical interface. And once again, I'm connected in host mode as well, so I can see all of my node systems. So some of the things you might want to pay attention to, I'm going to focus here on my wisdom system for a couple of minutes, and we're going to look at reports. And the great thing about host mode is I can go into any of my systems and I can run reports and I can look at setup and so forth. But under the reports branch, you will see some message history reports. So it's here where, for instance, we could run the good morning report. All right, and so for the good morning report, you might run it for a day, but I'd suggest running it maybe for 7 days. All right. Likewise, the most common messages report, let's just run that, let's say for the past week. And I'm going to ignore messages that occur less than 10 times. So let's go ahead and run that. So I just hit the print. You can see that there's a schedule button. We're all about automation. And I can get to that spool file here in my spool file viewer. So let's take a look at that real quick. All right, as far as my top messages occurring on the system, well, it looks like the save while active checkpoint processing message is actually occurring the most often, but I've got it automated with a message set. So likewise, I could drop down from there and I could basically pick the top 10. Once you get the top 10 automated, you can then work from the next top 10. You can see we've got we've set up enough automation that actually we don't have that many messages going into history because we're suppressing a lot of messages from our history, and those won't show up on that report. So the message history report will just be cleaner and cleaner and cleaner as you go. Other report sets reports I'd recommend taking a look at are the message set reports. All right, we've got a message set summary and a detail, and then here's the obsolete message sets report. So like what Tom said is, maybe you want to go back and a year. If a message rule hasn't run in a year, you know what? There's probably some evidence there that it could probably be deleted eventually. All right. Let's take a look, Tom, at robot network real quick. So here's robot network. All right.
Okay.
I said this is the central repository of all the events that are happening in your robot world. So if you have robot schedule, you have robot space, you have robot console and so forth, all those events are being posted here. All right, there's a severity associated with this. You can see we've got some jobs that ended abnormally. We've got some performance information coming in from Robot Monitor. We've got a subsystem's not active and so forth. What we wanted to show you here is that if you right click on your host system, go to properties, here is where you can set up centralized notification. A lot of people don't realize this. So for instance, if you've got robot console monitoring messages across multiple partitions, maybe 5, 10, 15, 50 partitions across your environment, you could centrally escalate out just from this single partition via a robot alert email, an SMTP version 1, version 3, we can even call it a user-defined program. All right, so each product has its own escalation options. So that's something to keep in mind. Wisdom is my host system. So let's just do a add library list entry RBT netlib and RBN ACK. All right, RBN ACK, this is a command we created to acknowledge the statuses or the events that show up in the status center. And so, for instance, you might want to just purge the status center after 7 days, because you know what, at that point, it really, those events are history, not important. They'll still be in the history, but you just don't have to worry about seeing them in the status center. All right, so that's a little bit of introduction to robot space and robot network cleanup. Tom, let's move on to robot monitor and robot space. I know we got the
Sounds
monitor and
good.
space
Looks like you're
out
doing the
there.
robot monitor piece, and I'll jump
Yeah,
in on console, or robot space rather.
sure, if you'd like to. So robot monitor, if you haven't seen robot monitor, this was added to our product line about 8 years ago now, and it provided some real-time visual monitoring and alerting, not just of system performance, but really of application performance. All right, so we can monitor a lot of metrics in a customized way in your environment. So you can focus robot monitor at certain workloads and the metrics around those workloads that you're concerned with, as well as doing things like library and IFS analysis. We can monitor JDBC and ODBC connections. We can do some things around BRMS, around robot monitor and mimics and so forth. And we can send out notification when things aren't good. All right, so a couple of things you want to think about in terms of data collection and robot monitor. First of all, if you don't have robot schedule, we're going to put the robot monitor collection jobs in a native scheduler. Otherwise, we will put them into robot schedule. Every one of your systems that have robot monitor installed on it will be will have a mondisk.f job running on it, and that's the job that runs once a day to collect disk metrics. All right, but all that data that comes into the robot monitor environment is stored on your central robot monitor partition. So there's a summary job that runs there. All right, so that job should be running either in the native scheduler or in robot schedule. And all these jobs are scheduled through the GoRM command in the MSM library. All right, so what we're doing is we're collecting a lot of data. We collect data in robot monitor every 30 seconds. So that does need to be purged, and the purge is not scheduled automatically. All right, so you have to go out there and you have to schedule that purge. It's done with the mon purge command. All right, and that purge command deletes both detail and summary data. For instance, you might keep the detailed data for 30, 60, 90 days, something like that. But the summary data, you might want to keep that for years. Now, because we're collecting a lot of data and you're purging it off, you want to consider reorganizing that. So we've got a specific reorganize command for our robot monitor files. So it looks like this: you purge data, you shut down monitor. Then, in other words, we can purge data while monitor's active, but the reorganize, using the reorganize physical file member command behind the scenes, has to be done without locks, and then we can start monitor back up. Don't forget about backing up your graphical interface. All right, so go to the file menu, there's a backup and restore settings option. So if you've been manipulating your graphical interface, you need to do that. All right, and that file goes to your local PC. Remember, the GUI stuff is stored locally, and so every user can make those changes. Tom, you want to talk a little bit about space?
I do, yes. So Robot Space is a product that we've had in the family of robot products for years. The thing that this really brings to the table, Chuck, is IFS cleanup, IFS storage, visuals. It obviously, and the reason I hone in on that, that's what makes it unique compared to everything else that you might be doing storage wise. It too can drill into libraries and it does some very unique things there, but I know there's just a bunch of tools that people use and manage in their libraries, but it's the IFS that really this product stands out. We can also monitor spool file consumption, ASP, ASP, QTemp, overall storage, and then provides usage graphs by owner, by library. But it comes down to it, it's the IFS, it's the storage cleanups, it's the automation around aging IFS files, save files, journals, journal receivers. So let's move ahead from here, Chuck. So when we drill into storage collection area, one of the things that this product does is maybe on a weekly or daily basis, you're going to set up some rules, or I'm sorry, you set up rules and you run them daily or weekly to go out and collate your library detail, your output queues, your IFS. From this screen here, you can drill into largest object in a library, largest stream file in a directory, very handy. But then we also have to make sure we clean up and run this processes properly. They're stored in the robot space lib. There's a thing called space collect. There's a command. We can schedule that straight away into robot schedule. There's the audit command, the space audit, which again can be scheduled in robot schedule to go out and run the various cleanup audits that you have. And then we collapse the information down and summarize it. So we do have a summarization feature, and what your long-term objective is how long do you want to keep this information summarized at the directory or library level. There's also ASP monitoring purge is automatically done, and then collection and audit purge needs to be scheduled too. So there is some history that is out there for the various items. So we have in the product setup for the ASP monitoring, we have the ability to say how long do we want to retain this information to. I mean, it's all about giving you some trending and some analysis for maybe more than 1 year on your storage. And then we have a purge that you can set up in the system setup area for the collection statistics, the threshold history, and the storage audit history. Again, these can all be scheduled really in your scheduler of choice. It doesn't have to be robot schedule. We prefer you use it, but quite honestly, you can go into other scheduling tools. So that's kind of your cleanup for space. I think you were going to show some things online here,
Yeah.
Chuck, now to do with robot monitor.
Yeah, let's do a little bit of a demo here. First of all, let's just look in the robot. I'll just use the green screen here just for a moment. And what I want to do is show how we have storage audits and collections scheduled inside of robot schedule. I'm just showing this real quick in a
That's
green screen.
great.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so if you're running these manually, there are commands to make this happen. And then likewise, I've set up a robot schedule reactive job stream for purging collections, thresholds, as well as audit history. So make that stuff happen automatically. In terms of robot monitor, let's take a look at that real quick. So if you're not familiar with robot monitor, it's a very visual tool. All right, I can just look at this at a glance and I can see exactly, for instance, where my storage is. You can see my wisdom storage is color coded orange, so it's starting to grow a little quicker. I can get a quick list, for instance.
Okay. Looks like we might have lost Chuck on the audio side here again. So looks like his screen's moving ahead. He's
And
showing
I'll just
us
give you,
yeah, Chuck, we're losing your audio.
okay, I'm back. Here I am.
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear
Okay,
me now?
go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So lot of data is being collected here. So we also have in robot monitor or robot schedule on the central system, which in my case is my Academy system, is first of all, I mentioned the monitor disk collection jobs will be scheduled on every system, but then I've got my purge jobs scheduled, and these you have to create yourself. All right, and the command is simply mon purge. You tell us whether you want to delete summary data or detailed data and how long you want to keep that around. So I've got a couple of jobs, one for summary, one for detail, with a different days to keep parameter for the data. So my detailed data I'm keeping for 60 days. My summary data I'm keeping for 400 days. Okay, we summarize all our detailed 30-second data by month and by day and by hour. All right, so that's all being done. In fact, I've also got my reorganize command reactive to my purge process, so that's happening automatically as well. Tom mentioned taking a look to see that you are up to date on your modification levels of your products. And the reason that is because we release features that you can really leverage. For instance, in Robot Monitor, one of our more recent features that we delivered was a dashboard slideshow. All right, so I've got multiple dashboards that I've created, and there's 4 of them that I want people to see. All right, I've got a 10-second increment on each one of these dashboards. And what that means is when I click on the Start Dashboard slideshow, we're going to see each of those 4 dashboards in this case being displayed for 10 seconds, and then it's going to continue on to the next dashboard. And so I can quickly glance at this and I can see exactly what's going on. This can just continue to be a slideshow running on my desktop for for as long as I wanted to, and then I can just click on the Stop Dashboard slideshow, or I can drill into any one of those dashboards as it appears. We have some YouTube recordings on creating dashboards and a whole bunch of robot monitor tips, robot space tips, got some robot console and schedule tips out there as well. So I believe in the follow-up material, we're also going to be sending out a link to that. So Tom, do you want to talk robot HA?
Absolutely, Chuck. Thank you. Let's have you move to the next slide. Robot HA is an important product to think about because we have a lot of customers that use replication with the various other robots, especially like robot schedule and replicating their schedule. So robot HA also has the ability to be looked at and made sure everything's good. First of all, we have the status at a glance where you can go into the work sync attributes panel, do F11, and you can toggle through all the various error columns. If there's no errors, it's all good. We also have built-in self-monitoring in this product. So there's an email configuration piece. You configure the email, and then on the lower half of the screen, you'll see there's an RSF check condition notification job. That runs in work job schedule entry. You could certainly put that into robot schedule, run that every so many minutes, and we'll send you a email with good or bad. And if you don't like to hear about the good and you only want to hear the bad, you can modify the source code in that program to only tell you when it's a bad error. Now, the other things we have is we also have purges. We have history in the product. Those are scheduled. You can change how often those run. We'll purge from the source side to the target. So we'll purge both on the, we call it production and backup server. And then we also have the audit function that we recommend that you run, and that just simply is comparing your libraries and your IFS directories from one side to the next. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, we'll show you a little more detail here. So this is the work with synchronized attributes panel. The nice thing about this panel is there's an F17 too on it where you can change the filtering. So you can see there's down on the end, you have some threshold conditions. Down at the bottom, you have late condition, apply leg, transfer leg, audit leg, private authority leg, spool file, etc. You can set those to star condition and we'll only show you the rules that have errors. So if you come in here and there's no libraries showing up, then that means there's nothing with an error because you're pre-sorted that way. So if we go on to the next slide, this is where we set up our email notifications. So inside the product, we have a menu option 3 off of system setup or change RSF default. and we can scroll down on that and set up your SMTP email configuration. And then we see over to the right, we have some of our team members getting notified whenever there's an error. So if there's an error in Robot HA, I automatically get a report and or email tell me what rules are in error. So those are really helpful from a HA monitoring perspective. On to the next slide, additional educational and services offerings that we have here at Fortra. We can schedule that free software health check. There's actually a form. You can go right to the Fortra website, fill it out, and we'll get you on the schedule. The other thing that I know Chuck and I and the marketing team have been working on, more how-to videos, 2, 3, 4, maybe 7-minute long videos on various topics with the various robot products. And that's all out there and ready for you to review. We go on to the next slide. Another thing I do quite a few of, and Chuck does some of, are technology updates. Basically with this, we invite your team, your manager, your director, your CISO, and we talk everything Fortra, or we specifically talk only towards the products that you own. It's up to you to help set the agenda, but we do think that, you know, your key vendors that you do business with on an annual basis, you should hear what's new and what's happening. And our organization keeps evolving and changing, and hence the name change and all the other cybersecurity technology that we're working on here at Fortra. But then also we can update you on the robot, the PowerTech, the sequel products, the showcase, etc. All right, next slide here. Finally, we're going to skip over the polling question here, but open it up for any questions that are out there. One of the questions that it was hanging out in the chat, Chuck, was, can you automate the blueprint function so that you could actually schedule creating the blueprint diagram from batch? And I talked to I chatted with some people around this in the past, and the answer is no. We'll add that to the enhancement list. So that is
Yep.
potentially a good idea. I'm trying to think about it because it's kind of a one-time activity. You probably wouldn't schedule that to run all the time. I don't think I see value in that, but that's, you know, I've been wrong before on that.
Yep.
Any other questions that we have
Well,
out there, Chuck?
yeah, we've got some questions around cleaning up robot schedule history. And one of the questions is, they know they're deleting history, but they're still seeing old history from a job that ran last year. And most likely what's going on is, in general system defaults, you've got the option turned on for purging by job occurrence. So let's say every 30 times that a job runs, the 31st one then takes the place of the first one. So, you know,
Sure.
it kind of cleans up as it goes. So if a job doesn't run very often, it could hang out there for months, if not years. So there is a RBT 655 program that you can call with a parameter string, and you can delete by date. So if you want to, for instance, keep all your job history records for 2 years only, not by occurrence, take a look in the user guide for RBT 655. Tom, anything else?
No, that's a great tip. Just a follow on to that is every job actually has on it, on the control panel, the number of history accounts to keep. So I think that's good for now, Chuck. We're right at the top of the hour. So I want to thank everybody for joining us here on this now Fortra webinar versus Help Systems. We will have a executive webinar covering that whole topic in probably a couple times throughout the year in 2023. So we look forward to talking to you in the future. Thank you again, Chuck. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.